let's shift over to some wide receivers here. We'll keep it in this Pittsburgh-Baltimore matchup. Should be one of the most fun games on this slate. And for this, we just had a video breaking it down. You can check that out last week where we looked at all of the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers, Diontae Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and kind of broke down each one of these guys. They're all seeing pretty healthy snap shares, but coming off a game that kind of shook up what we thought this Steelers wide receiver core was going to be. Now, as of right now, Diontae Johnson did not practice. This is on Wednesday when we're recording right now. It's not out of the ordinary for Diontae Johnson to take some maintenance days over the week. He's been one of those guys who's been, if he's questionable, doesn't really matter. All that matters is if he's active on game day. I think you've got to plug him in the lineup because at this point, whenever he's healthy and active and on the field, he's been the Steelers wide receiver one. And he's been a guy that's extremely viable in fantasy, has been scoring touchdowns. He has 3 so far on the year and is leading the team in targets every time he's out there. So I just don't know what you can do other than, for Chase Claypool and Juju, just hope that Diontae Johnson's not healthy and that Claypool's going to have some explosion.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 games we've seen Diontae fully healthy, he's had 10 targets, 13 targets, and 15 targets. So if he's out there healthy, Diontae Johnson is at the point where I know he's burned you a couple times because he's gotten banged up in games, but you just have to play him because if you didn't, you missed out on games like he had last week, that big 2-touchdown performance. So if Diontae Johnson's healthy, I'm playing him. The 2 more interesting guys to me are Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool, and Juju feels like he should have a higher floor, but I don't know that he actually does, and Claypool definitely is the higher upside guy, as we saw in his 4-touchdown game. Stef, Juju's coming off that fantastic performance. He's been very up and down this season. I think right now I'm still willing to flex Juju or put him in as my wide receiver 2. We're seeing the Steelers absolutely deal right now. They're the only undefeated team left in football. This game against the Ravens offense is good. I don't expect this to be a blowout either way, so there is going to be a healthy game script for both sides throughout. So I do expect Juju to get enough work in this game to have some fantasy relevancy. The problem is just the target counts for Juju Smith-Schuster don't quite add up to production for me in terms of yards, because we're seeing Juju like in a game like last week. How many targets did he have? 14? Let me spot check this. 14
Season
targets,
high.
only 85 yards. Only 85 yards, though. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit concerning to me. Only 5, 5, and 4 targets the games before that. He's always a threat to score. He can make big plays. So, I'm not reading too much into it, but I just want to make sure that everything is good there because you got Claypool and Diontae Johnson, 2 other really strong weapons. Ebron's getting involved as well. I just don't want there to be, a game where I'm starting Juju and he gets forgotten about like he had the previous couple weeks. So you kind of got to ride the hot hand. You got to ride the snap counts and the targets and the things we're seeing on the field. But with both Juju and Claypool, they've shown that they can kind of burn us. Claypool's game last week, I can't even describe. Don't drop him just yet. Maybe you put him on your bench until he's back in action. We recommended starting him to everybody. We said, look, this is one of those guys. While he's hot, you have to keep starting him. You have to go with the trends. You have to go with what you know. He burned us last week, so we learned a lesson. I'm fine to roll him back out there if you want to, but if possible, I'm trying to leave him on my bench right now to see if he can get things worked out.
It wasn't like they took Claypool off the field either. 65% of snaps. He has at this point shown, if you look at the snap counts, his usage, the routes run, he's taken over as the wide receiver 3 over James Washington. So I think he has a starting role. It's just a matter of, hey, was it really so reliant on Diontae Johnson being out of the lineup for Claypool to have those explosions? What Claypool hasn't been, outside of that one game against Philly where he had the 3 touchdowns, that 42-point outing that he had, he really hasn't been a high target guy, but nonetheless, he's still been producing. So he's a boom-bust option. He's probably what, we thought Michael Gallup was earlier in the year. That's kind of what Claypool is now, and it feels like, Claypool is kind of taken all the juice out of Juju, and it's become, all the explosiveness is now with Claypool, whereas Juju's just floor, almost like a Cole Beasley type of guy who's just this near the line of scrimmage, safe option for Big Ben to check down to when the pressure's coming his way. And in a game where the Baltimore Ravens are going to be sending a ferocious front 7 at Big Ben every single play, I don't think there's going to be a lot of time for Chase Claypool to get downfield and get open. On top of that, they have a great secondary, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey. So for those reasons, I'm sitting Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster this week. but willing to roll them back out later on. The next 3 weeks are fantastic for the Steelers. They have Dallas, Cincinnati, and Jacksonville after this Baltimore game. So it's almost like, hey, just sit them for a week and then pop them right back in there.
Steph, let's move on to someone I've been conflicted about. It's CeeDee Lamb. He's playing the Philadelphia Eagles this week.
Oh, boy.
It's looking like it's going to be Ben DiNucci, Andy Dalton, as of this recording, still in the concussion protocol. So keep an eye on that because I do think Andy Dalton is a big deal over Ben DiNucci. But Steph, CeeDee Lamb coming into this game, top 10 wide receiver on the year in PPR, absolutely dealing, had seen at least 5 receptions and 7 targets in every single game this season. Comes out against Washington, 5 targets, 0 catches, has 1 rush for 1 yard, gave me that 0.1 last week in my lineup. To me,
Sheesh.
I've been as big of a CeeDee Lamb fan this year as possible. You got to put him on your bench, right? I mean, there's no chance. Like, I might have to start him in a league. I've been trying to sell him everywhere, but I think that window is gone. I'll tell you what, you put up a 0-point performance and your value tanks. So it feels like this would be a sell low if I traded him. But I'm just afraid if he has 1 or 2 more bad weeks, his value is going to be out the window.
Yeah, I think you got to hold.
You got to
CeeDee.
hold and put him on your bench.
Sell him high if you can, but I don't think any fantasy managers are going to buy high on CeeDee in 2020, knowing what that quarterback situation looks like. On top of the 0 for 5 through the air, CeeDee was also off the field a lot. Only played 55% of snaps. That's tied with his lowest on the season. The last time he did that, he had 20 fantasy points though, not 0. So with CeeDee, I know maybe you look at the Eagles and, they're 21st against the wide receiver. It could be a decent defense to stream against, but you just can't trust with the quarterback turmoil that's going on back there. You can't trust him at all in your lineup.
Yeah, and I mean,
just
the thing
hold,
is,
don't drop.
Yeah, put him on your bench, see what happens. But he did get 1 red zone target actually in the end zone that was very close to being a touchdown. The defender made an incredible play to get back on the ball. So that could have changed the whole narrative of this week. So that 1 touchdown could have turned things around. I think the snap count was low because this game was out of hand and they kind of pulled their starters at the end because they were just trying to get home. So, I'm not reading too much into that. But if Ben DiNucci's the starting quarterback, there's just no way you can start CeeDee Lamb. If it's Andy Dalton, I think he is someone, it looks like a long shot for Dalton, but if it is in a deeper league, I might consider flexing him. But again, we're trying to avoid him at all costs. But Steph, let's go ahead and move over to another guy that's typically a slot receiver, Jarvis Landry. But now OBJ is out for the season with a torn ACL. What do we expect from Jarvis Landry moving forward? And are you willing to start him this week against the Vegas Raiders?
I am willing to start him this week just because I do think OBJ not being out there is a slight bump. I don't think it's as much of a bump as most people would think with Hollywood Higgins emerging there, with Donovan Peoples-Jones actually showing out a little bit in this game. I know it was against Cincinnati, but Jarvis, he's only seeing 5.5 targets per game. Baker hasn't been throwing it a ton. Though the one glimmer of hope and why I'm willing to start Jarvis this week is just for how hot Baker looked in that Cincinnati game. If this is going to be kind of a emergence for Baker in the 2020 season, I mean, he had 18 straight completions. It was 7 for 7 on passes 10 yards or more downfield. So you look at some of that efficiency that Baker's having with this low pass volume. I think that's where Jarvis Landry can produce. You add it that, his expectation in terms of his workload, what they're going to ask him to do is going to increase with OBJ out there. I think you look at Jarvis as a guy that, he put up 11 fantasy points. I think that goes up a little bit. Expect him in that 13 to 15 range. Doesn't have a high ceiling, but were we ever thinking of Jarvis Landry as a high ceiling, high upside guy? No, you really weren't. So he's a safe flex option if you need him this week. Safe, desperation wide receiver too. And you look at the matchup too. Las Vegas is the bottom 10 against wide receivers. So I think I am willing to flex him. How about you?
Yeah, I'm willing to flex him. It's, full season. I'm not, like you said, I'm not bumping him up dramatically because OBJ is out because of those 5.5 targets a game and Baker only attempting 28 passes a game. That offense's passing volume is just low. But if there was a game to start him, it's against the Raiders. They've been weak against the wide receiver. This Browns team is playing pretty well right now, at least the offense, as Baker is absolutely dealing. And the Raiders have been involved in shootouts all season long. They're averaging 28 points a game, and they're giving up 32 points a game. So they're in these games. Like every time I turn on the TV on Sunday, I feel like the Raiders are in a back-and-forth battle. You got Nelson Aguilar running deep routes, becoming relevant again. And whoever they're going against is absolutely gashing their defense with big plays as well. They're a team that's made a bunch of big plays and has also given up a bunch of big plays, which is kind of the recipe for these shootouts. I expect that to continue. I think Jarvis Landry gives you a really solid floor this week. And if he's able to bust a big one for a touchdown, which he's not necessarily known for, but maybe they rely on him a little bit more with OBJ out, you have to buy into that narrative a little bit and at least see what happens out there. It could mean a big game. So I'm willing to start Jarvis Landry. Rest of season, I think he is a wide receiver 3, someone you can roll out there as your flex every single week, when before it was looking like he was kind of fading a little bit. So I'm not going to bump him up to something ridiculous. I'm not going to buy in too much, but he at least is moving up my board to where I feel a little bit more comfortable with him on a week in and week out basis.
Let's talk about one more wide receiver here, a guy that's emerged this year, and there could be some questions about how much longer he's going to be a guy in the starting lineup. We'll break it down here, but it's Travis Fulgham, practice squad legend for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're up against the Dallas Cowboys here in Week 8, which is just a gorgeous matchup. Right now, that game is slated to be played on Sunday Night Football. I hope they can flex that Ravens-Steelers game into the Sunday Night Football window. Otherwise, this Eagles-Dallas game this Sunday night is going to be a snoozer. Maybe I'll actually get to bed early for once. But right now, Dallas is 20.
Ben DiNucci is going to be having a rough one out there on Sunday Night Football in prime time. I can't even imagine what that's going to look like. Might be worse if it's Andy Dalton.
Well, the Cowboys are 25th against the wide receiver. Fulgham has been the wide receiver 1. He's been their alpha wide receiver for the last 3 weeks. 13, 10, and 11 targets the last 3 weeks. He's had touchdown on 3 of the 4 weeks he's played. So he's getting looked to in the red zone, in the end zone. Now, it hasn't been the highest efficiency, hasn't been the highest catch percentage, but he's getting some decent yards after the catch as well, averaging 10 to 15 yards per reception so far this season. So you look at the matchup, but then you look at the other things that are happening with these wide receivers in Philadelphia. We have Deshaun Jackson. He's on IR. He's out pretty much I think, for the rest of the year. There's no way he can come back and at least be what he was. Alshon Jeffrey, they said he's unlikely to play, but he still might get in there, which I'm not worried about him. You can tell me if I'm wrong here in a minute. But Jalen Reagor could be coming back as well. Now, the question is, does Travis Fulgham still have fantasy value when Alshon Jeffrey and Jalen Reagor are back? We also have to keep in mind Greg Ward has been a guy that's been fighting for snaps, but you look at what Travis Fulgham did last week. He played on 96% of snaps. That was a season high. So that tells me, look, he's over Greg Ward in terms of a depth chart, in terms of how the Eagles want to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers. And for Fulgham, he's been a guy that they've played all around the formation. You think at Jalen Reagor, his skill set and what they drafted him to be, he's an outside field stretcher. He's not going to be a slot guy. I think he actually does have the capability to be a guy who can play in the slot. I love Jalen Reagor as a prospect. He was one of my favorites coming into the year. But I think Travis Fulgham will still be out there in any 3 wide receiver sets. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to play in the slot a lot. And I think they're going to have to rely on him to make plays. So for all those reasons, you look at the matchup too. I'm willing to start Travis Fulgham against Dallas if I have to in my flex spot. Am I just out of my mind here, Alex? Are you with me?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was wrong on Fulgham a few weeks ago. I said he might be like a 1-week plug and play off the waiver wire, and then he's out. He's proven me wrong, and he's another one, kind of like we talked about Chase Claypool, and our mindset last week was he's putting up numbers, he's putting up production, he's getting the snaps, he's getting the targets. If you get someone that's hot like that, you just have to go with it until they prove you wrong. And Claypool proved us wrong finally last week, so we're going to put him back on our bench, temper expectations. But last year, you look at A.J. Brown, he never proved you wrong. He kept putting up numbers again and again and again, and it got people a lot of wins. With Fulgham right now, he's getting the snaps. I mean, 96% of snaps last week, and then the last 3 weeks, double-digit targets in each game. The snaps are there. The targets are there. I don't care if Alshon's back. I don't care if Jalen Reagor's back. I don't care if the tight ends are back. To me, I'm finally at the point where I'm willing to start Fulgham until we see targets, snaps, and production come down, at least in my flex spot. So Carson Wentz is on fire right now. Believe it or not, these Eagles are leading that division, and they have this juicy matchup on Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys defense that's terrible. And the one thing that could be working against them is the Dallas Cowboys offense not putting up points because they might just be running the ball for the whole second half. So hopefully, whether it's deer in the headlights, Ben DiNucci, or historically bad primetime Andy Dalton, the Cowboys can put up some points to keep this game script, positive for the Eagles passing game.